Greggs Bakery is the most popular place to dine in the United Kingdom, with more than 2,300 locations spread across the region. Greggs is bigger than McDonald's, with nearly as many locations as Starbucks, Pizza Hut and Nando's combined. In 2022, the company brought in an impressive nearly $2 billion in revenue. Quite the feat for a business mainly dealing in sandwiches and sausage rolls. But there's a much darker side to the Greggs Bakery empire. One involving some of the most shocking and disturbing crimes to hit Britain since the exposure of Jimmy Savile. It's a story that will leave you wondering who knew and when, and how was one man able to weave his way through positions of power for his own revolting gain. This is the story Greggs Bakery never wanted to get out. You know Greggs is the friendly face of the sausage roll, the home of northern comfort food that has brought joy to communities all across the UK. After all, Greggs is where we take our kids for a quick bite to eat or for a midday coffee. And the company has proved incredibly successful, employing some 21,000 people across an ever-growing number of locations. But one man nearly brought the empire to its knees, Colin Gregg, son of the company founder and heir to the Greggs multi-billion-dollar fortune. But before we get to the story of the bad bakery boss, we need to start back at the beginning. So from humble beginnings, Greggs got off to a rather simple start as a door-to-door bakery. A baker by trade, John Gregg founded the company in Newcastle in 1939 with the humble goal of providing flour, bread and pastry products to mining terraces in and around the city. The first recognisable Greggs store didn't open until 1951 and still differed quite a bit from the stores we see dotting the UK today. Nonetheless, this is the year that marked the birth of Greggs' chain of stores, which would go on to become a veritable institution across the nation. Growth and expansion. After his death in 1964, John's sons Colin and Ian took over the Greggs brand. The latter son had come across some inspiring work while studying at Cambridge and set to the task of improving the efficiency of his father's bakery. As the duo of brothers saw more and more success, they began to set their sights on expansion. In 1971, they founded their first charity, a pea and pie supper for the local elderly population, followed by the Greggs Foundation, which earned an excellent reputation for its tireless community work. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Greggs absorbed shop after shop in and around the Newcastle area, even managing to go public in 1984. At this point, Colin Gregg started to focus more on the company's charitable works. Soon after, Ian Gregg stepped down as chief executive, handing over the reins to the much more experienced Sir Michael John Darrington. A decade later, Greggs really put itself on the map, so to speak. Indeed, 1994 was the year the company purchased the Baker's Dozen chain, which allowed it to double its number of locations overnight. From here, expansion was swift. The company switched its business model from one focused on baked goods to that of a fast food chain. They made sure their stores were open earlier and closed later, and expanded its menu to include popular on-the-go items like sausage rolls, sandwiches, and even donuts. This move put Greggs in direct competition with some of the biggest franchises in the world at the time. But thanks to its long history in the UK, what was once a humble bakery became one of the biggest food outlets in Great Britain. The Piers Disagreement. Several years later, Greggs would draw the attention of many Brits when it went to war with the television host Piers. The company had the audacity to release a vegan sausage roll. In response, Morgan, ever looking to stir up controversy, attacked the company for being too woke, despite the use of that term being some years off by then. He even went so far as to call them clowns in a scathing post on Twitter the day of the announcement. Nobody wants a vegan bloody sausage roll, you PC ravaged clowns. Greggs wisely seized the opportunity as a source of free publicity, responding to Morgan as well as other detractors directly. This ended up providing the new vegan sausage roll with loads more publicity, even causing it to sell out in most locations in the United Kingdom. Greggs embraces fashion. In 2022, Greggs partnered with Primark to release its own line of clothing and merchandise. The clothing line includes sweatshirts embezzled with the tagline, "It's a pastry thing," as well as hats, socks and even underwear. It was a bold move, even for a company that was well known for its bold moves. However, given Gregg's status as the most popular eatery in the United Kingdom, the new clothing brand paid off in spades. The company not only enjoyed direct profit from the sales of the items, but increased brand loyalty, as well as in the Newcastle area, eager shoppers bought up the hats, hoodies and accessories in a number of hours. After the sellout, some of the items were even appearing on eBay, where they were seeing bids several times higher than the original value. It just goes to show you, while the Greggs company is known for taking risks, it also has a long history of watching those risks pay off. Colin Gregg, the bad bakery boss. But through all of this success, something sinister was happening behind the scenes. In March 2017, 75-year-old Colin Gregg stood in Newcastle Crown Court, having just been convicted of 9 counts of indecent assault. The victims claimed they had been abused over the course of decades, all of them when they were between the ages of 11 and 14. Gregg, a married father of 3, remained wholly defiant in the face of the charges, claiming he was the victim of a witch hunt and that the young men were all fantasists and liars, looking to make a quick buck from the Gregg family fortune. Judge Robin Mayers, undeterred, said,
"This was sophisticated predatory behaviour. You are a sophisticated predatory pedophile."
Gregg had been instrumental in the growth of his family's company. He was also a teacher, social worker and mentor, which many claim he used as a way to insert himself into positions of trust with young boys. The charges against Gregg date back as far as 1963, with the victims claiming they continued over the course of 30 years, like the disgraced television host Sir Jimmy Savile, whose own sexual assaults against children came to light years earlier. Gregg cloaked his misdeeds under the guise of charity. This was made all the easier due to his extensive wealth and his position on the board of several children's charities. Indeed, Gregg actually owned several children's charities, which the prosecution claimed gave him direct access to young boys over the course of several decades. Though victims were urged to come forward, the nature of the crimes, as well as the fact they occurred so long ago, means we may never know the true extent of the damage Gregg inflicted.
For many years, shame and embarrassment were easier to tolerate than the truth. Mr. Gregg's abuse of power and trust left me with an extremely cynical and mistrustful view. It took a long time for me to develop the maturity to comprehend the reality of what actually happened to me.
The court listened for days as the prosecution and its witnesses outlined the details of Gregg's unspeakable acts. How he abused one boy in his swimming pool and another in his gymnasium. In some cases, the assaults were more brazen. As a trusted teacher and advisor, he would invite the boys to his luxury farmhouse to allow them to drive his car. Once alone, he would molest them in all manner of horrible ways. As is typically the case with these sorts of crimes, Gregg was able to use his position of power and the inevitable shame and confusion the boys felt to keep his deeds hidden.
As an 11-year-old, my naivety and emotional immaturity meant that the only way I could resolve this dilemma was to assume that what had happened was my own fault.
In the end, Judge Piers sentenced Gregg to 13.5 years in prison. The court was filled with tears from supporters, victims and their families as the judge sternly condemned the millionaire and his dark deeds.
It is also true that you used those benefits as a cloak of respectability behind which you sexually abused young boys. You were a charismatic, inspiring teacher and mentor, but you used those attributes to groom boys and to protect yourself from allegations.
Much of the trial focused on the fact that Colin Gregg was the son of Gregg's founder, John Gregg, who passed away in 1964, 1 year after the abuse allegedly began. It's true that Colin had worked for his family empire for some time before expanding his efforts into multiple other businesses, including his many charities. On March 30th, 2017, Gregg's official Twitter account posted a simple statement regarding the matter.
Colin Gregg has no involvement with GREGGS plc and hasn't been involved in the company for many years.
It was the biggest hit the company's image had ever taken. Colin Gregg's sentence reduced. While Colin Gregg's crimes are a very dark and very troubling stain on the face of the Greggs empire, both the public and the company can rest easy knowing that the 75-year-old convicted paedophile is behind bars. But this could all change in a matter of a few years. Indeed, Gregg was originally sentenced to 13.5 years of prison for his crimes. However, he and his lawyers began issuing appeals immediately after the sentence, including making an effort to have his conviction overturned entirely. Though this was denied, Gregg's sentence was reduced to 8.5 years. This means he'll be released in the mid-2020s, a fact that will certainly be met with at least some social media attention. It goes to show you what money and power can achieve. This means that Greggs will once again have to contend with their worst public relations disaster, who literally bears the last name of their company, walking around as a free man. One can only hope that he doesn't purchase any items from the clothing line. Thanks guys, that's the end of the video. This is Visionary Minds. My name's Glitch, and I really hope you've enjoyed the documentary today. If you have, please do consider subscribing and liking the video. Have a good day. Thanks.